The conference title says that in this life, life itself is never enough for us. It is a line from a beautiful, well-known song by Edita Geppert. So what is it with this life of ours? Well, dear friends, many people do not even know that they are not really alive. In the parable of the prodigal son, Jesus puts these words into the mouth of the merciful Father. This son of mine was dead and is alive again. How was he dead and then alive again? After all, he took his father's money, went away, wasted it, fed pigs, and then came back. There was no funeral, no grave, no physical death. And yet through the words of the merciful Father, Jesus says, "My son was dead." In Revelation, we find similar words. Write this to the church in Sardis. You have a name for being alive, but you are dead. Dear brothers and sisters, there is a fundamental difference between truly living and merely existing. Nowadays, they make artificial flowers so well that people look closely and say, "It's fake." No, it's real. No, it's fake. What are you talking about? Touch it. So we touch it, and someone says, "Of course it's fake." No way, it looks real. Only when we see that there is no water, and yet it is still blooming, do we start to get suspicious. So am I alive, or am I dead? Am I being led by God? A living person says in life, "All my springs are in you, O God." A dead person is ruled by fear, anxiety, comparison. A dead person cannot say certain words. A dead person cannot enter into relationships of love. Once, in Klembau near Warsaw, a woman told me, "I ask my husband, 'Do you love me?' And he says, 'I already told you once, and I haven't taken it back, so that should count.'" Dear gentlemen, students come to me at St. Anne's with struggles involving purity, sex, pornography, girlfriends, masturbation. I always ask them one question. How many times has your father ever taken you aside and said, "Son, you're 25 already. Come have a drink with Dad. My treat. Let's go away to the mountains or to Śniadły Lake, just the two of us, and talk. I'll tell you a bit about life, about women. I've been with your mother for 30 years. I've learned a few things. I'll pass them on to you for free." Dear gentlemen, dear ladies, do you know what the answer is when I ask how many times their father ever had that kind of conversation with them? Never. 90% say never. For 25 years, my father's only messages to me were, "Take out the trash. Don't talk back to your mother. Turn that howling off and study." That is all he ever said to me. And yet people say, "I talk with my coach, I talk with a priest, I talk with my teacher, I talk with a friend, I talk with my doctor, I talk with an instructor." The only man around me I do not talk to is my own father, the only one. It is unbelievable, and it describes 90% of Polish society. And what is that man doing? He is working 2 jobs, always on the move, always earning money. You have a name that says you are alive, but you are dead. You are only surviving. Once, a young man realized this very deeply, that he had spoken with all kinds of men, but never with his own father. And he said to himself, "This has to change." He was afraid to do it face to face, so he picked up the phone. He called home. His father answered. "Oh, hi, Robert. Good you called. We were just eating." "No, Dad, I'm calling for you." "For me? What happened?" "I wanted to thank you for paying for my studies all these years. You get up in the morning, go to work, and I know you don't even like that job, but you do it for me." Silence on the line. "Robert, have you been drinking?" "No, Dad, I haven't. I just want to thank you. We argued sometimes, but you're a good father." Robert, do you need money? No, Dad, honestly. I just wanted to tell you thank you. Just thank you. As I said, men are not usually very expressive. Finally, the father said, Robert, thanks, because I've been waiting for that phone call for years. That was it. Full stop. They talked for 180 seconds. They will never forget that conversation for the rest of their lives, because it was a living conversation. Maybe clumsy, maybe imperfect, but alive. And all those everyday exchanges. How did Poland do against England? They lost, of course. We are experts in short, shallow conversations. How are you doing, ma'am? Oh, my kids are making my life miserable. Some people feed on their misfortunes. In Ursus, one woman was chasing the parish priest. When she caught up with him, she said, beaming, Father, the doctor told me I have the highest blood sugar in the whole neighborhood. And she lives off telling everybody about her blood sugar, her illnesses, how miserable things are. You think you have it bad, she says. You have it good. I'm the one who has it bad. My husband drinks. He takes things out of the house. And someone answers, You think you have it bad? I spoke to your husband. He is an abstainer, just not a practicing one. Are you alive? Can you pass life on to someone else? Can you say to someone, I love you? Or do you treat people like objects? When is a person truly alive? A certain priest, whom I had the grace to know, once said at a conference, You are alive when someone knows you completely, down to the pain, knows all of you, and still loves you. Is there anyone like that in your life? Sometimes we say, Jesus, if my wife found out what I once did, or if our children found out what their father and I sometimes say, or if the priest knew, or if people saw me sometimes when I pray, is there someone who knows you to the core and still loves you? If there is no one like that, then you are not alive. You do not have a source of life. Sometimes I am amazed by how well spouses know one another, and sometimes I am amazed by how little they know one another. Once I was visiting a couple. The wife was making tea. We were having a pleasant conversation, and the husband says from the next room, Father, I'll tell you a joke. His wife says, Don't, he replies, Not that one. That is an impressive level of communication without words. On the other hand, a married couple once came to see me to solve a problem, but immediately started arguing. She attacked him. He attacked her. I said, Ladies and gentlemen, there is no point in me just watching the two of you fight. Maybe the wife should step out and wait in the office, and I will talk to your husband first. The moment she left, tears started running down his face. I said, Has your wife ever seen that tear? No. And she never will. Never. Do we really know each other? Are we one body or not? A man once came to a family counselor from Poznan and said, My wife left me, but I've got everything written down in a notebook, everything she was like. Pulikowski took the notebook, flipped through its 100 pages, and finally said, Sir, you only have one complaint against your wife. What complaint? You resent the fact that she is a woman. You wanted a wife who would be a man, think like a man, act like a man, move like a man, speak like a man. But she is a woman, and that is something you have to learn. Where do these problems come from? Why do we not know each other? Why do we pretend with one another? Why do we perform? Yesterday, a man came to me 4 months after his wedding and said, It's over. Divorce. From the way he described it, His wife was mentally unstable, irrational, badly put together. But I never believe only one side. Never. Only after hearing the other side do I begin to form an opinion. Once a woman came to a family counselor and said, "Sir, my husband is a monster. So why did you marry him? He was not like that before the wedding. Then what happened to him after he met you?" And there was that unhealthy silence, like in Shrek. Ladies and gentlemen, he was not a monster before, and he is not a monster now. They simply started revealing their cards. Father Joseph Augustin the Jesuit once said, and I do not know if married couples here will agree with him, that courtship is one great lie. He exaggerated, of course, but there is a lot of playing roles before the eyes finally open. Why is it like this? Because there are several selves inside us. A lot of this comes from childhood. Many of us in church today heard in childhood that we were unwanted, unloved, a burden. Maybe our father said it, maybe our mother did, and not only in childhood. Father Adam says that we remember the moment of our conception. Of course, we do not remember physically what happened between our parents. Our mind was still embryonic, but our soul remembers whether we were welcomed in love or not. If parents are intimate, but are thinking only one thing, let there not be a child, let there not be a child, be careful, there mustn't be a child, and then a child is conceived and comes into the world, that child often carries this deep feeling that no one loves them. They arrive at university or in a classroom and say, "You do not like me," and others say, "What are you talking about? Sit with us, have coffee with us." No, you do not love me. You are only saying that to be polite. But we really are glad you are here. No, you are saying it out of pity. I'll just go. That person cannot believe love because something has been coded too deeply. But before we judge parents, which I would strongly advise against, we must remember there are no people born outside of God's love. God wants every person who is born. God has willed every human life into being. And yet, unfortunately, very early on, we receive messages that wound us. I once knew a nun whose mother called her at the convent and said, "Beata, Grandma died. If you had not gone into the convent, Grandma would not have died." These are the kinds of things we throw at one another. Or when a father says to his wife, "It was supposed to be a boy, but fine, let it be a girl." That little girl hears it. She cries because she feels unloved, unnecessary, like a burden to her parents. How many children blame themselves for their parents' divorce? Dad left because I was naughty. Dad left because I made his life difficult. And they cry for their fathers. And when we begin to feel unwanted like that, we start building what I recently read is called a role preserve, a kind of signature performance, a trademark defense. Many of us have one. For one person, it will be intellect, being well-read, articulate, impressive. That becomes the act they hide behind. Remember, when someone talks a lot and very fast, often it means they are trying to hide something. Do you remember when your mother called you in childhood and asked, "Were you at school?" "Mum, I was at school, but it was raining and I was late. But yes, I was there and I got an A." "Were you at school?" "Well, not for the first class, but from the second one onward I was there, honestly." "Were you at school?" And then we stop babbling. Many people hide behind intellect. Others hide behind illness, having the highest blood sugar in the neighborhood. Others hide behind having the hardest life. Anything, as long as they can have their signature act. At the beginning of life, this may even be necessary. Children defend themselves that way. One says he will be an Indian. Another says he will be a great footballer. Those are childhood protective roles. But later, the corset becomes impossible to take off. What kinds of role preserves do people have? Take a philosopher type. You say, "Let's go for a walk." And he replies, "And what exactly do you mean by the word walk?" Or the husband observer who says to his wife, "I've been observing you. You cry in corners all the time, just like your mother. Do you want to talk about it?" Like some highly trained psychologist. So we step into many different roles, and they make it so that I am no longer one person. There are several of me, depending on what needs to be shown. At work, I show the intellectual. At home, I show, the brute who curses in front of the children. I choose whichever self is useful to me in the moment. And then you are not living. Then there are 4 zombies living inside you. 4 clowns, 4 puppets. You have to find out who you really are. Many people do not know, or they pretend not to know. And here is one sign. It becomes very hard to meet people from outside your home, outside your usual environment. I remember going from house to house blessing homes years ago and sensing how uneasy people were. In general, they were just waiting for me to leave, because a child might blurt something out, or a husband might say something that would ruin the image. "Father, maybe you should be going now." A girl once came in while I was there. Her mother said, "This is my daughter Asia. She's 18. She still comes and sits on Mummy's lap sometimes, so I can stroke her." "Mum, what are you saying?" "Father, maybe you should leave now. Can't you see this is going badly?" So how do we find out who we really are inside, in the middle of all this chaos? When I first became a priest, I often went near Zamość to a retreat house run by Franciscan sisters. They kept asking me to preach after morning mass. I was young and full of zeal, so I would preach about radical Christianity, about breaking with sin, about resisting Satan. Then once I went there on vacation with my mother, I forgot she was there. I started preaching in my usual style. We must be radical Christians, cut off sin, be tough, never let Satan in. And then I looked up and saw my mother sitting in the front row, so I changed mid-sermon. God's mercy calls us to understand other people. I suddenly felt very insecure. One priest told a story about being in a hospital where his own father said to him, "Son, hear my confession." "Dad, I'll go get the hospital chaplain." "No, you hear my confession." "Dad, I'll get another priest." "Son, I invested 6 years in you. Am I not going to get any return on that?" So he heard his father's confession. Half an hour later, his father died, and the priest said, "Jesus, if I had not heard that confession, the guilt would have crushed me." Can you speak to your children about God? Can you speak to them about the church? Or is it only, "Don't talk back to your mother. Take out the trash. Turn that noise off and study"? Are you alive? Are you really alive? Yesterday I visited a woman in the hospital. She began the conversation very directly. "Father, I wrote you an email in August saying I was seriously ill, and you never replied, not one word. It hurt me very much. Do you see?" She did not run off to gossip with her friends. She said it directly to me, face to face. I said, "Madam, perhaps the email never reached me, but if it did reach me and I failed to respond, then I sincerely apologize. That is what it means to correct someone in love, to say something in love, to let someone know they are loved, that they are awaited, that something is expected of them. So how do you know who you really are inside? The mind is a liar. It schemes. Jacek Pulikowski says, and forgive me, gentlemen, that there is no filth for which a man's mind cannot produce an ideology. He once met a man and asked, "How are you? I heard you left your wife and went off with another woman." "Yes." "My dear man, go back to your wife and children." And he replied, "I once saw how much a woman suffers when she is abandoned. I will not do that to another woman." A masterpiece. We should put him straight on an altar and print holy cards with his face. He leaves his wife because he does not want to abandon his mistress. We can justify anything. Under communism, those lies were everywhere. In a power plant in Warsaw, 2 industrial guards were watching the workers. One old guard sat at a table eating a sandwich, and a younger one was looking to see whether anyone was sneaking anything out of the factory. A man walked by with welding rods sticking out of a shopping bag. The young guard said, "Hey, what are you doing? You're taking out welding rods." And the old guard said from behind him, "Why are you bothering the man? If he's taking them, he must need them, right? We can create an excuse for absolutely anything. So how do I find out who I really am? How do I know whether I am alive? You have to do something in which the mind, the liar, does not have time to participate. And what is that? Reflex, instinct. If you scald yourself with hot water, you do not stop to think, "Interesting, should I scream or not?" You scream. Reflexes reveal us. Gentlemen, and ladies too, what did you say the last time someone cut you off in traffic? Surely you said, "Oh, dear driver, you have violated traffic regulations. Please do not do that again, brother driver of a 4-wheeled vehicle." Of course not. A friend of mine once shouted a certain word when someone cut him off. I will not repeat it in church. He forgot that his daughter was sitting in the back seat. The whole way she kept asking, "Daddy, what did you call that man?" "Nothing. You did say something." "Oh, that? That means God bless you in Portuguese." But seriously, reflexes reveal us. You come home, take off your shoes, hang up your coat, and your daughter says, "Mom, there's no bread." And you snap, "Couldn't you have told me earlier instead of waiting till I got undressed?" And then later, you ask yourself, "Why did I shout at that child?" Reflex. Do you know how to tell when a confession will be a good one? When someone comes into the confessional, says, "In the name of the Father," and then goes silent. I say, "Well, shall we begin?" And they say, Sparks are going to fly." The worst are those who have a melody for confession. The same melody every Catholic in Poland seems to know, la 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 la, mindlessly recited. But when someone is wrestling, when they are alive, there is one sentence they struggle to force out over 5 minutes, but it is their sentence. There are several people inside us, and we are afraid they will be exposed, afraid someone will catch the other me. If I were always fully a priest everywhere, even without a cassock, I would not be afraid of that exposure. Rafał Ziemkiewicz wrote in Polatu that in Western Europe or in the United States, if someone looks at you on a bus, people think, "He's looking at me. I don't know him. Maybe we've met somewhere. Just in case, I'll smile." And strangers smile at one another, nod to one another. Try doing that at 6 in the morning on a bus in Sochaczew or Grodziec. Stare intensely at a local man, and you may hear, "You want a punch in the face? Got a problem?" Why? Because he is afraid you are reading him, seeing that he is simple, crude, maybe even immoral. Ladies, at weddings, all the women look their best. Dress, hair, makeup, everything. A cameraman comes by and they say, "Don't film me." I say, "Madam, if you were dressed for sweeping an attic, I would understand. But you look amazing. Why don't you want to be filmed?" Because they'll film me, then they'll watch me somewhere and comment on me, and I won't be able to defend myself. To be yourself, to uncover yourself, to show who you really are, at first, it is costly. Because when we take off the role preserve, it feels like there is nothing underneath. That is why we like to stay dressed in smiles and standby phrases. Where do people come to know who they really are? In hospitals. A professor I know in Warsaw, always elegant, always impeccably dressed, always dignified, once said that he went to the hospital because of intestinal pain. A doctor examined him and said proper tests were needed. Do not eat for 3 days, then have an enema and come in. He said, I arrived, they told me to undress completely, and there I was lying there like a newborn while they inserted that thing, you know where. Then the doctor said, "Oh, this is a very interesting case. Would Professor be willing to let the medical students observe?" 30 students came in. They all peered into his intestines and said, "Wow, amazing." And he said, "I suddenly became very small, from a great professor into a tiny little man." The same thing happened to me once, when I was still a seminarian without a cassock. Some sisters invited me to a Christmas gathering for blind and mentally disabled children, including children with Down syndrome. I was terrified of them. I was never particularly good with children, and sick children frightened me even more. So where did I hide? Behind the word artist. "Father, would you play something?" "Just a moment. I'm tuning the guitar." "Please sing Silent Night." One moment, still tuning. Then one little boy came over, tilted head, slanted eyes, and said to me, "You, hit those strings, because if you don't, I will." Exactly. In hospitals, in places where someone may laugh at us, where we are stripped down, that is where truth comes out. One of the saints said, "Do not tell me that people without a sense of humor are serious people. They are not serious." We have to return to ourselves, come out of these lies. Americans calculated that a person lies 18 times an hour. When I first read that, I thought, 18 times a day, a week, but an hour. How is that possible? Then think back to the last Friday you were at work. You walk in and the manager passes by. "Oh, Mr. Manager, I'm so glad to see you." 1. A co-worker asks, "Do you like my new dress? You look fantastic in it." 2. Meanwhile, you are thinking, "What an awful potato sack. How was your weekend?" "Oh, my husband and I visited some beautiful gardens near Glewich." 3. In reality, you spent all Sunday arguing. Soon enough, it adds up to 18. Once in Otwock, a nurse I knew bumped into me and said, "Oh, Father Piotr, you look older. You've really filled out." No, I have just aged. I am not saying we should blurt out every raw thought that enters our heads, but the problem is that we no longer know who we are, because we are caught in a game, and then we cannot hear God, because God writes letters to your real name, your real address, but you change your name, change your address, and are pretending to be someone else. So your mailbox is full of letters from God, but you keep checking the mailbox of a false self, and it is always empty. Why do other people understand God, hear Him, speak with Him, but not me? Come back to yourself. And let me say a few words now about being yourself as man or woman, about sexual identity. That is very important. As for gender theory, the idea that someone can choose whatever sex they want, for me personally, one thing settles it. When I was a little boy, my mother was sick or in hospital, and my father bathed me and washed my ears. He nearly tore my head off. He smelled of cigarettes. He was rough. When he dried me, it felt like he was peeling my skin off. Then he laid me in bed and sang lullabies. Sleep, my little son, sleep. It traumatized me. When my mother came back, she was soft. She smelled beautiful. She had long hair. She sang lovely lullabies. She tucked the blanket under my feet just right. And it felt wonderful. Do not tell me my father and mother could simply switch roles. I do not believe it. Of course, I am simplifying a little. It is not as if men have only male traits and women only female traits. God gave some masculine traits to women and some feminine traits to men. Why? Because if a father dies, a mother may be left to raise sons, and she needs some toughness. She has to teach strength too. A private detective once said that when a man comes in and says, "Detective, I think she's cheating on me. Find out with whom," the man often breaks down crying, "I'm so sensitive, she doesn't love me." But when a woman comes in, she says, "Find them and call me when you know where they are." Then he calls and says, "I know where your husband is meeting the mistress, but I can't give you the address. Then come pick me up." She goes there, rings the bell, the husband opens the door. "Oh, Jesus, my wife," and there is no discussion. It's instant action. Gentlemen, remember this. In the heart of a betrayed woman, there is more hatred than in hell. Don't risk it. So yes, men can be more delicate than many women, and women can be tougher than many men. But who are we really? The Bible says, "You search me and know me, O Lord." God knows us, and that is why we must go to Him and ask, "Who am I? What in me is normal, and what is distorted?" At the beginning of Genesis, Adam is alone. He must struggle with the land, wrestle with reality. He needs strength, achievement, success, failure. Something works, something doesn't. That is our life as men. Our life is struggle. Remember childhood. Can you hit that window with a stone? Can you steal the teacher's gradebook? What's your 100-meter time? Mine's 14 seconds. Mine's 13.8. A boy once came out and saw girls playing elastic jumping. He asked, "Which one of you is winning?" They said, "None of us. We're just jumping." So what's the point of a game like that? For men, a game is for winning. I love the way men can speak with such deadpan certainty. If there is something a man doesn't understand, he often says it is stupid and not worth understanding. Women also compete, of course, but they can also spontaneously enjoy one another. Before work, a woman says to another, "Your hair looks beautiful. Who did your highlights? You look gorgeous." Can you imagine a man before work? "Oh, Wadek, what a beautiful jacket. Turn around, let me admire it." No. A man says, "Not bad. How much?" 600. "I saw one like it for 300. End of conversation. Among women, relationships matter more. At gatherings, I always wish I had more than 2 ears. With one ear, I overhear this conversation. With the other, I catch that one. Among men, where do you keep your money? In your bank. How much does yours burn per 100 kilometers? 6.4 on the way to Warsaw. Not bad. Do you already have Windows 8? Heard the drivers freeze? Among women, what's going on with Beata? Is Marta still with that Reseek? No, they broke up. And that neighbor of yours, the older man who just came out? Relationships. Ladies, If you want to go to the Philharmonic, tell the man you want to go to the Philharmonic. Give him 2 weeks. He will figure out what a Philharmonic is, where it is, how one gets there, and then he will come back with tickets. Seriously. Sometimes a woman suffers in silence through some strange inner mechanism, even though one honest conversation would have dissolved the suffering completely. So, listen to her. And of course, there is one more thing a woman wants from a man, that he be captivated by her beauty. When does Adam speak for the first time? When he sees Eve, "This, at last, is bone of my bones and flesh of my flesh." Until then, Adam had no lines. Ladies, you can see this everywhere. In Otwock, I once sat by the ground floor window while our young sacristan was chopping wood. He had enough wood for 3 hours of chopping. Then some female students walked by and fluttered their eyelashes. He chopped the whole pile in an hour and a half. Then he started chopping the chopping block. Then, if I hadn't stopped him, he would have chopped the whole planet. I finally said, "Calm down. And girls, go home. Can't you see what's happening?" Notice something else. In art galleries in Stockholm, London, Paris, you will see many paintings of a woman lying on a sofa, hair loose, flower in her hair, perhaps nude. People stop and say, "My God, what a beautiful painting." How many paintings do you see of a man lying on a sofa? And when you do, your first thought is, "Man, get up and do some work." Because a man changes the world through action, while a woman changes the world through beauty. Ladies, yes, you can be engineers, ministers, professionals, inventors, but that is not your deepest specialty. One woman who truly inspires and enchants a man may set loose in him the energy to build 5 hospitals, make 5 inventions, transform a whole world. If she tried to do it all herself, she might do one. Your strength is beauty. That is astonishing. I see it even on pilgrimage. Priests are exhausted, standing all day in cassocks. Then a young nun comes by. Suddenly they stand straighter. Jokes come back to mind. Energy returns. Would sister like a ride somewhere? But father doesn't even have a car. No matter. Ladies, when you examine your conscience, it is worth asking not only about sins, but also, do I care for my beauty? And I do not mean only clothes and makeup, though a little of that too. The finest beauty salon is the confessional. That is where eyes become clear and hearts become clean. In Warsaw, I see many women who look like models, tall, slim, polished, but heavy, lifeless, leaden. There is no smile, no light in the eyes, because often they have traded too much for success, have no time for God, no time for prayer. And then there are 80-year-old women at Corpus Christi processions, waving to the Blessed Sacrament. Once you are over 80, you may wave back. There is no sin in that, and they are beautiful. My mother turned 80 a few days ago. She is a woman. When I come in, the little cloth is set out. The teacup is ready. 2 Raffaello sweets are already waiting for me. Bartek, are you feeling all right? Something happened in the courtyard. Mrs. Kowalska, you can't imagine. Then, lie down for half an hour. Get some sleep. I'll cover you with a blanket. There is no sexuality there. She is my mother. She is 80. But there is warmth, femininity, beauty. Be like that. This matters immensely for women, though many pretend it doesn't. I once brought communion to an elderly woman living in terrible poverty. She did not even have chairs, so we sat side by side on the bed. As she confessed, I found myself looking around thinking, Lord, how does this place not collapse? Damp walls, mold. Someone has to help her. The next day, I met her neighbor who said, "Our old lady was thrilled after your visit." What did I do? She said, "The priest is so modest. He kept turning his eyes away from a woman." She was 80. Do you see? A woman still wants to know, am I beautiful? Am I still captivating? At a retreat once, while waiting for soup, a young woman took a spoon, wiped it clean, and used it as a mirror. Gentlemen, which one of us would ever think of that? Beauty, beauty, beauty. Look at Mary and Joseph. Joseph sees Mary pregnant. He knows the child is not his. According to appearances, she deserves death. And what does Mary do? Does she sit him down and explain everything? "Joseph, let me walk you through this. An angel visited me." No. Why? Because she knows Joseph will come through. She does not defend herself with arguments. Joseph looks at her and says, in effect, if she had sinned, she would not have such clear eyes, such good eyes, such pure eyes. Everything outward suggests guilt. What man would naturally believe in a virginal conception? And yet she defends herself by beauty, by purity, by light. And that revives a man. So ladies, remember beauty, remember goodness. A woman is even beautiful in helplessness. I once stood at Plac na Rozdrożu in Warsaw. A woman was driving with no air in her rear tire, thudding along in complete confusion. It was not because she was stupid or primitive. It was simply that her helplessness had something beautiful in it, something that awakens a desire in a man to step in and help. And now, a few words about men. Gentlemen, we are in crisis, often because our name was given to us by our mother, not our father. And a mother gives names like, my little darling, my sweet kitten, my precious boy. But the name a boy needs is different. My father would call me soldier. Some fathers say to their sons, commando, get down here. Warrior, they give identity through words and through actions. Among Aboriginal peoples, a father would take his son into the forest, cut his own arm, and smear the blood on the son's lips. The meaning was, until now, your mother fed you milk. Now, I feed you strength. Among the Jews, the father took the son away from the mother. Why? Because a boy must learn to suffer. He will have to fight, and he must learn endurance. And you ladies would never agree to that. Remember when as little boys we got hurt at Auntie's birthday? We ran to Mum. Mum, my finger hurts. Oh dear, let me see. Yes, poor thing, here too. And here. Then we ran to Dad. Dad, I hit my finger. Show me, fine. You won't die. The finger still hurt, but Dad had spoken. You won't die. That is how it worked. When husband and wife walk through the park and their 10-year-old son runs ahead and another 10-year-old starts fighting with him, every woman wants to stop the fight. Separate them. Don't hit him. The father says, wait, he's doing all right. Higher with the right hand. Now hit him. Hit him now. Gentlemen, if someone never had a father like that, he is poor indeed. The finest decoration for a man is a scar. My father once lifted me over barbed wire in Otwock and tore my leg. I still have the scar above my knee. The greatest scar, a keepsake from my father. A father must give a son his name. But to do that, the father himself must be spiritually strong. And that is why we priests too are learning how to minister to men. Thank God more and more is beginning to happen in Poland for men spiritually. Why does this matter? If a family is unbelieving and the mother converts, she brings the family toward God in about 13% of cases. If the father converts, he brings the family with him in 93% of cases. A man's faith is that important in the home. Sons look at their father. Does dad pray? How does he pray? For centuries, even until today, there are still more women in church than men. On weekday morning mass, you may see 10 women and 1 man. A bus recently left St. Anne's for pilgrimage. 40 girls, 1 boy, plus the driver. Someone once asked, "Why do women like church so much?" Well, because all week a woman may think, "When I go to church, I'll wear those heels I can't wear to work. I'll put on that coat." She arrives, and what are the songs about? Love. I love you. I adore you. And what is near the altar? Flowers. There are altar servers to look at, maybe even a handsome priest. No wonder she wants to go. And what does the man get? He has to stand there and stare. Men tell me church is the program of 3 S's. Stand, listen, sing. One man said to me, "Father, I will never in my life go to a prayer group meeting." Why not? Because I went once and they made me do the worst thing in the world. What was that? They told me to hold another man's hand, my sweaty hand in another sweaty man's hand. I have never felt my heterosexuality so strongly. And then they wanted me to open up and talk about my sins. I said, "Then don't go." Ladies, do you know what your husbands and sons are afraid of? That the church will turn them into limp, transparent little weaklings. Some men say, "I'll allow baptism, but I won't let my son be an altar server. He won't be running around in a little robe." Many men think church is built for women, and now and then a man graciously shows up for God. A friend of mine once picked up a hitchhiker while driving his little red Fiat from Lublin. They talked politics. The man swore constantly. When they stopped at a bend in the road, the hitchhiker offered to pay. My friend said, "I'm a priest, so keep your money. Just say a rosary for me." "Oh, you're a priest?" And I was swearing like that. "Yes, a little." "So what should I do?" "Just pray a rosary for me." "Of course, Father. My wife will pray it." "My wife will pray it." Gentleman John Paul II had a moment free and immediately, rosary. Once Mother Teresa was asked at an airport, "Do you have a weapon?" "Yes." "What kind?" "A machine gun." "Show us." She held up the rosary. "Do you know why the devil cuts through so many families as he pleases? Because we do not shoot at him with the machine gun. God wants to make you a courageous man, not a weakling. And that is what the church is for. The church still needs to learn how to do this better. Of course, many men are afraid the church will take sex away from them. A man once went to Rome with his wife. They stayed in a pilgrim house run by nuns. All day they toured basilicas, then had supper, drank wine, sang, came back to their room, undressed, lay in bed, started cuddling, and then looked up. Above the bed was a picture of Jesus, hung at an angle. With one hand, he pointed to the crown of thorns on his heart, and with the other, he pointed downward. The man said, "Father, we moved apart instantly, folded our hands, and for 2 weeks slept on our backs." I said, "Sir, was that your wife?" "Yes." "Well, then you were absolutely allowed to love her. Jesus invented sex, not us." So men need different forms of ministry, different approaches, different books. They should not mechanically absorb every proposal made for the general church, because not everything reaches men where they are. And maybe what I have said today is one small attempt to build that bridge. The priest announced the academic chaplaincy. I strongly recommend it during student life. It is a good place to have your name changed from little darling, sweetheart, cutie to brave warrior. Thank you for your attention, your presence, and our prayer together. God bless.